soon as the news came to light about Sheikh Jassim's bid the other day, there was, immediate cries on social media as you'd expect from the fans urging the Glazers to basically pack your bags and get lost. So it is going to just keep rumbling on. And I think, like you said there, the fans, at the very least, they deserve some clarity on what's happening. They deserve, a statement of some sort. You were in the mix zone at Wembley last Saturday when Avram Glazer walked through. He was asked a couple of questions. He completely blanked both of them and carried on walking. And it wouldn't have done any harm just for him to take 30 seconds to step to the side and say a few words and just to address the situation. But obviously, they are remaining silent on this. And obviously, there is a big split among the fan base who they want to take control of the club moving forward, even though they're all united in wanting the Glazers gone. Sir Jim Ratcliffe remains the favourite to take over, but of course that is with a majority stake rather than a full sale. But there seems to be obviously the fact that will see the Glazers still have some involvement. It's putting the fans off Jim Ratcliffe taking control, isn't it?
I think there's a certain demographic online anyway, more particularly, who just want Qatar and only Qatar anyway. Then there's another demographic who may be a bit concerned about any takeover that includes the Glazers staying on whatsoever. I can see that. I can see those reservations against Ratcliffe. The fact that he would sort of cozy up to the Glazers for a bit to give them what they want and let them stay along. But the truth of the matter is, 51% or 100%, it's still controlling the stake. It'll still be Sir Jim Ratcliffe's club. He owns the majority of the club if it goes through. So to that regard, I think that you can't worry about it too much, and the understanding is that the Glazers would be kept on for a few years, and then they'd be contractually obliged to give up all control of the club, and maybe 5-6 years down the line it would be just Sir Jim Ratcliffe who runs Manchester United. So you can see why fans are thinking that they'd rather have Qatar in those instances, because they want to end all association with the Glazers, and that is fully understandable. But I also wouldn't maybe be so concerned about Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid to, the fact of the matter is he would have the control and stake. That is what matters. The Glazers would be there in ceremony, but they wouldn't really have much power or any say in what actually happens with the club. Yes, they'd still be taking money, dividends probably, and still earning from Manchester United. But the fact of the matter is it will be Ratcliffe who is then held accountable. It will then be his own new era, and for his own sake, he will want to make sure things are done properly, so he doesn't get off to the wrong foot. And I think it's important, whatever happens, that whoever is successful in this takeover bid, they need to come out publicly and have a real long, hour-long or so sit down, either with club media or with external media, and just lay out their thought process and their real sort of their plan to put Manchester United back where they want them to be, because they both came out with really interesting and engaging statements when they signalled their intent publicly to buy the club. But once that actually goes through, there'll be even more scrutiny, and it's not just a case of your words, it's how you actually execute it. What is the game plan? So I think it's really important as well that whenever the takeover happens, firstly, there has to be unity from the supporters, because yes, you might have a preferred bidder, but either bidder is better than the Glazers. I think it has to be seen as that from United fans' point of view. And from there on, you then need to really gauge, where's this money coming from? What is it going to finance? What is the actual procedure? You might get the money, but then how are you going to spend it? Because this isn't me being anti-Qatar. Well, it might be twisted to be, but you look at like PSG. They have got Qatari backing, but they are not a well-run football club. They are not the blueprint United want to follow. So if Qatar get in, they need to prove that they aren't going to make United into another PSG. They need to show that they're going to be able to invest properly, and it isn't just all hyperbole and strong statements and using key buzzwords to get United fans on side. There needs to be actual plans set out that everyone can buy into and see. And there just needs to be clarity. We've mentioned that clarity on what's happening right now, and then once a successful bid is potentially approved, some clarity on how United are going to move forward and what's actually going to change, because even if they get new owners, it's not going to be a magic one solution. Things won't just change overnight. There's going to be a lot of hard work that needs to go on behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. Structure and philosophy is such a big part of any football club nowadays. And, the man that's led United's most recent philosophy is, of course, Erik ten Hag, and he's done an excellent job over the past 12 months since he came into Old Trafford. And as a result of this saga that's seemingly never ending, he's probably the man that's suffering the most, because he needs that word clarity. That's what he needs ahead of next season. And, the transfer window opens in 5 days' time as we record this. He, of course, has been able to put some plans in place, what he wants to do, obviously, and we'll talk transfers shortly. But in terms of a budget and what he's going to have to work with and who's going to be funding his budget, he's not got that confirmation yet that he needs desperately. So potentially the man that's, started United's resurrection could be the biggest casualty of this whole mess. So on that sense, if the transfer business is going to be impacted, Erik ten Hag's going to be the man that's going to be in the firing line of the media and the questioning. But none of it's his fault, is it?
No, absolutely not. And there'll be certain things that are Ten Hag's responsibility and he can be blamed for, but he can't be blamed at all with what happens this summer because it's so out of his hands. And United said they wanted to have the deal done initially by Easter, was it? And then it was before the summer transfer window opened, and like you said, 5 days left, probably less by the time you're actually listening to this, wherever you are in the world. And it does really affect and have implications on what United are trying to do in the transfer window. We understand the deal, and we'll get onto it later. The proposed deal for Mason Mount doesn't really matter who's in charge or what happens with funds. That's a player United actively want to get. Still some disagreement on the fee between the two clubs. So that's one that they're working on. But it's such a fluid situation with so many little cogs, so much mitigation, and so many variables involved that it really is difficult. First of all, United don't know in black and white what their budget is. There's an initial budget sort of pre-takeover that they'll know what they've got to play with if there is no additional funding made available. That has to be supplemented by player sales, we know that. And then you've got your targets within that. So as things stand, United won't be able to go out there and buy. I mean, initially Ten Hag wanted a world-class midfielder and a world-class striker this summer. Right now, that's not doable. Even with player sales, that would probably be unlikely. So until you've got clarity on the takeover, you can't really pursue a world-class striker and a world-class midfielder. You might be able to go for one, probably can't go for both. If United then get the takeover, you might be able to. But by that point, United might have already tried to strengthen their team. They might have bought a striker. They might have bought a midfielder. So then then they might have the budget to go and buy someone else, but they might not actually need to. Other positions on the pitch, we know United are interested in perhaps another centre-back, perhaps a right-back, a goalkeeper. But again, these are variables. Things can change so quickly depending on who's sold, depending on how much money is available from potentially a successful takeover. So it really is hard to plan. United know the priority is to get a striker. We'll get onto that in detail later. But again, the type of striker they want is affected so much by the takeover. We all know Harry Kane is the one they want the most. Ten Hag is obsessed by him. But right now they can't afford to go get him. They can't afford to pay what Tottenham would require to sell him to a domestic rival. They would have to pay way beyond the club record fee to do that. And without the takeover, that simply isn't possible. If we knew the takeover was imminent, in a few weeks they might have that money, then they could delay their plans. They could go in and hold off and then get Kane. But right now they're acting with a proviso that he won't be for sale and they won't be able to afford him. So they have to look at alternative targets. But like we said, if then a takeover was sanctioned in the final weeks of the window, you then have that money. So there's just so much uncertainty right now. And it's really interesting from our point of view because by definition, almost everyone could be linked to United this summer because they could be able to afford anyone. They might also have to look at lower targets. So there's a wide spectrum of players I've had to consider, a whole list of targets for each position as well, again, which are variable depending on how the money moves about. And yeah, it sounds confusing what I've said because it is very confusing. There's so much to gauge and, United wanted to get their business done earlier this summer, but I just think until there's clarity on the takeover, they can't.